The following story was created by YouTube user Anomaly. If you enjoyed this story and you want to check out some of their other content, I'll be sure to leave a link to their channel in the description below. As always, guys, thank you so much for taking the time to check out this video. And if you enjoy it and you want to see more content like this, please make sure to subscribe to Something Sinister. Our story opens with a warning that reads, "This audiovisual recording was prepared for the new personnel joining the investigative team of the Department of the Space Simulation in the year 2023. The material is the exclusive property of the International Convention for Space Safety, composed of the governmental scientific agencies of the United States, Canada, and France. Its dissemination is subject solely to historical review purposes, and its replication outside of the American jurisdiction is strictly prohibited. Article 13 of the Secrecy Pact of the International Convention regarding the safeguarding of the 1994 incident known as the Reset. The following material corresponds to the final report of the Project New Moon conducted between 1990 and 1994 on Canadian territory. Static introduces us to the New Moon Project. It is currently 1968, and the United States Space Security Department is studying anomalies on the Moon. This is the time of a great space race, where both the United States and the Soviet Union are competing to see who can conquer space travel first. While the Soviet Union is aiming to launch a satellite, the American crew is more concerned with the exploration of the far side of the Moon. Here, they suspect a rift is forming that could cause the Moon to crack. This rift, as we will come to find out, is very large. As a result of the rift, the Reinholz-Ferrier luminal hypothesis is put into action. This hypothesis suggests that the Earth is influenced by the Moon, not from a traditional perspective of gravity, but rather that it is the sunlight reflected from the Sun that causes the majority of these phenomena. The hypothesis, in short, questions whether or not the Earth can go without the Moon. We then jump to 1990. Fearing that this rift could lead to the total destruction of the Moon as a whole, the United States, Canada, and France have created the New Moon Project. This project aims to build a large, hollow, synthetic proton projector using what they refer to as a chemical element known as 116. This element, while it is newly discovered, has the capability to recreate the luminosity of our moon. With element 116, the government would essentially be able to cover up the destruction of the moon and replace it with a fake, projected moon. Between 1990 and 1993, this fake moon hologram projector would be constructed in remote Canadian territory. In 1994, the first tests of this projector would begin. Element 116, however, would have adverse effects on the human body. Despite this, more tests would be projected over the Canadian wilderness. Element 116 would cause the trees to undergo slight structural alterations. Some trees even underwent changes at their molecular level, and their components became impregnated with element 116 and its radiation. As a result, scientists would cut down these trees and bring them in for further testing. By late 1994, the final calibration of the projection machinery took place. The fake moon was then elevated to the correct position in the sky. Dr. Reinholz was present for this and witnessed a major catastrophic miscalculation. In the sky, it was very clear that there were two moons with considerable distance between them. This would lead to the automatic implementation of the emergency level protocol known as the Reset. The Reset was designed to correct any sort of disaster that the New Moon Project might have caused. In this case, the Reset would involve using a similar projector to recreate a simulation of the night sky as seen from planet Earth, in order to counteract the effects of the second moon. In more recent years, such as 2019, it has become apparent that the holographic layer has been losing its effectiveness. This has been witnessed in the night sky by people all around the world who have claimed to see two moons. We then rewind to 1998 for this presentation from the U.S. Department of Defense and NASA.
In 1986, the German broadcasting network Deutsche Welle financed a documentary that never saw the light of day. Despite the extensive technical team, including astrophysicists, chemists, historians, anthropologists, and archaeologists, foreign pressures were exerted on the federal government to prevent the audiovisual material from being disseminated under any circumstances. Given the events that occurred on the east coast of the United States and Canada in 1996, the review of this German investigative material is of utmost importance in understanding the phenomenon that, due to the technology from the New Moon Project's hololuminescence cannon, was made possible to be kept hidden from the civilian population.
Following this, we are treated to a historical documentary regarding the Tower of Babylon. Now, for those of you who are unfamiliar with the story of Babylon, I'll give you a little bit of like a brief synopsis because it is a very fitting story for what we're talking about. This story comes from the book of Genesis in the Christian Old Testament. So at this point in time in the story, everyone across all nations or everyone alive speaks the same language. Now, because everyone is able to communicate with each other and collaborate very effectively, everyone agrees to attempt to build a tower that is so tall that it will reach the heavens. They sort of thought that by accomplishing it, it would bring them some type of glory or holy transcendence. But God was watching from above and saw that their power stemmed from their ability to communicate effectively with one another, and sort of thinking that man could potentially get too power hungry because of this. God made everyone immediately start speaking different languages. And now, because they were no longer able to understand one another, the builders were unable to complete the Tower of Babylon, or the Tower of Babel. I don't know what the correct term is. I think they're kind of synonymous, but for all intents and purposes of this video, Tower of Babylon and the Tower of Babel, the same thing. So everyone, now speaking a different language, everyone spreads out across the world, and this is how linguistic and cultural diversity begins as far as the Bible is concerned. As the documentary continues, the narrator suggests that some historians believe that the tower was not a structure built by humans, but was instead a space structure of sorts that settled on Earth for unknown reasons. Following this historical background, we are given satellite images from 1996. These images show an anomaly over the eastern coastlines of the United States and Canada. As the text states, the massive anomalies are black patches that we see in the photographs. We then see footage from a CNN broadcast that was interrupted. If I'm being honest, I can't really tell what we're looking at. CNN then sends out a message reading, "It is recommended to all of you in North Carolina, Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and Maine to stay tuned despite the technical difficulties. If you require assistance, please contact our technicians, who will be glad to visit your residence to explain the reasons behind this signal failure. We remind you not to leave your homes. Please continue watching our programming. There is no need to be outdoors." This strange interruption, as it turns out, was not exclusive to CNN, but instead occurred across many other networks. Following this incident, a report was sent to the Chief of Interstellar Security.
The following report was urgently sent to the Chief of Interstellar Security Department at the Pentagon. New York, September 29, 1996. Jan Fuvera, Delegate of Security, United States Government, is sending correspondence to Peter Widman, Chief of Interstellar Security Department at the Pentagon, in order to inform about strange anomalies on the eastern coast of the United States and Canada.
To Mr. Peter Widman, Chief of Interstellar Security Department at the Pentagon. Notice that during the early hours of September 20th until the evening of the 29th of the same month in 1996, extremely unusual occurrences have been reported along the eastern coast of the northern American continent, specifically spanning from New Jersey, United States to Nova Scotia, Canada. Immediate notification has been sent to the relevant authorities for the urgent activation of civil security protocols requiring joint action from the American and Canadian military. Communication networks were promptly severed, and pertinent information related to the ongoing investigation was placed under strict control of the Ministry of Defense. During the same time frame, the censorship of photographs by state satellites and electromagnetic blockade in orbit over American territory were ordered. Mr. Andrian Wood, NASA's emergency delegate, has reported on the confidentiality of the case to prevent leakage towards Roscosmos and CNSA. Awareness is taken of the hololuminescence cannon project by the United States Department of Interstellar Security and the International Department of Space Simulation for use in the event that its usage becomes extremely pertinent. Expert recommendations suggest that, should the event described in this document repeat, the hololuminescence cannon must be fully operational and at the disposal of the United States Ministry of Defense no later than October 3rd, effectively bypassing Emergency Airspace Intervention Protocol 48. The report and photographs are attached on the following pages.
So, to make this all a little bit more palatable, these anomalous black structures, ranging in size from 6 to 25 miles long, have been appearing all across the eastern coastline. They're emitting this very low frequency that most people can't even hear. Some people even reported seeing lights on these structures that would appear before vanishing. Needless to say, the United States Department of Defense is freaking out a little bit. A lot of people have seen these structures, and the government's afraid that people are going to start to panic. Some people begin to speculate that what they are seeing in the sky could be similar to what we saw during the New Moon project, where the moon was projected in the sky but obviously was not there. However, this is not the case with these strange anomalous structures, because people report seeing birds land on them, leading to the fact that they are in fact physical structures and not just a projection. More footage from the Babylon documentary states that many view the Tower of Babel as a large stone structure. However, archaeological recoveries from the Middle East and India suggest something else. This painting, recovered from India, shows what appears to be some sort of alien-like structure. This is a recurring theme throughout the other paintings found. The towers have a spaceship-like design to them. Some of them even have appendages of their own, tentacles coiling around each other from top to bottom. These depictions all lead to the idea that the Tower of Babel was some sort of extraterrestrial spacecraft. A security camera plays footage of a storm from 1996. The wind blows harshly. This storm was reported by the Meteorological Service of the city of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. On a map above the affected area, we can see that another dark spot has returned. Strangely enough, the storm brought the presence of scorpions, which reportedly fell from the sky as if they were rain. We are then told that the news outlets, such as CNN, were prohibited from reporting on this anomalous event. During this time, the Pentagon is scrambling to figure out what to do about the situation. It is at this point when Bernard Ross and Richard Wagner Fliss introduced the Babylon phenomenon. In this meeting, a series of evidence is presented regarding the scorpion rain recorded by different cultures contemporary to Babylon. Our first example comes from India. In this instance, the dome of the second Garden of Eden was considered to be a place that was a safe haven from plagues. Another recording from China shows a drawing and account of a scorpion rain over Babylon, where the scorpions were expelled from the valves of the tower. Another entry from Turkmenistan features a constellation of scorpions that tested humanity, where men faced off against one another to gain entry into the new Garden of Eden. So let me give you a little bit of background on the second Garden of Eden, because as a Christian, this was something that even I was not really familiar with, and I'm gonna do my best to try and explain what I found. So it's pretty commonly known that the first Garden of Eden, as talked about in Genesis, was a place of paradise and the home of the first man and woman, Adam and Eve. This paradise would soon be jeopardized as God gave the two one rule, which was not to eat from this particular tree, which was the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And as we know, Eve would be tempted by the devil who appeared to her in the form of a serpent, and she would then eat from the tree, her and Adam. And by Adam and Eve eating from this tree, this is the first sin. And after this, Adam and Eve were asked to leave the Garden of Eden, never to return. Now, the second Garden of Eden, as referenced in this story, is, to my knowledge, a more Jewish belief. In short, they basically believe that the Garden of Eden is divided into two different sections. Now, the first section, known as Higher Eden, is home to God and his throne. And Lower Eden is home to more things like the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and basically a lot where Adam and Eve would roam when they were there. But I also found that the second Garden of Eden could be in reference to Adam and Eve's second home after they were kicked out of the Garden of Eden. Let's backtrack to 1992. Lieutenant John Corelli is a specialist in ancient Asian history. He is tasked with heading an excavation near the ruins of the Tower of Babel. What are he and his team looking for exactly? According to Corelli, there are ancient tunnels underneath the Tower of Babel. Excavations began in September of 1992. It wouldn't be until February and March of 1993 that the exploration would discover these tunnels. The trouble wouldn't stop here, however. Exploring the tunnels proved to be difficult, as their dormancy led to the buildup of permafrost and freezing temperatures. The team persisted, however, eventually finding a large vault underground. According to historical records, this vault belonged to King Scorpion, who was one of the monarchs in the Babylonian noble lineage. In the vault itself are large stone statues depicting the Scorpion King, his arms all extending upwards, signifying his hold on the world. Wall drawings were found as well. That was not all that was found in the vault. The exploration also led to the discovery of an egg in one of the ceremonious coffins. Scientists had initially thought that the egg was an animal in nature, its preservation in perfect condition because of the ice. This egg and other objects of the vault would be taken in for scientific evaluation. By 1994, the egg found in the ruins was placed under surveillance. In the following 6 months, it began to evolve. Histological tests found that the egg's material was made up of a previously unseen microorganism. When all of these microorganisms would begin to unthaw in the room temperature, they could be seen moving and multiplying. This caused the egg to increase in size, eventually hatching a creature with no defined shape. It did not move at first, and remained the same striped pattern as the egg. As time progressed, the creature would exhibit hostile behavior towards the scientists. The creature possessed a retractable tail that extended almost twice the length of its body. Things would take a turn for the worst in 1996. The creature would eventually transform and disappear from its holding cell, leaving behind a dismembered tail of its body. This event was directly linked to the appearance of the Towers of Babel on American soil. According to the text, there were hundreds of reports of police calls along the entire eastern coast of the United States and Canada. These people reported seeing large, alien-like towers in the middle of their cities. In response to this, Emergency Protocol 48 from the Department of Defense for aerial events allowed for the immediate use of the hololuminescence projector on the East Coast. Their goal was to project a large storm around each of the towers to divert attention from them. Once the towers were covered up, emergency teams were dispatched to explore the strange towers. Here's what they found. First, the towers might be some sort of interstellar macroorganisms that landed on celestial bodies for reproductive purposes. Second, the towers might have some kind of defensive mechanism involving spores if they were attacked or disturbed. Thirdly, the towers were divided into two different types: structural hibernation and propagation. The exploration teams were only ordered to enter the first type, structural hibernation. In this state, the towers were mostly stagnant and void of any apparent extraterrestrial life. Upon entering one of the towers, the explorers felt as though they were entering a new dimension. The interior of the towers almost seemed to be even bigger than their exterior. The image quality in most areas inside the towers were quite poor, as if energy similar to radiation affected its quality. The team would eventually find a series of tunnels that led deeper into the towers. It's important to note that the team could not find access to any higher levels of the towers. As they went deeper, they found that the tunnels were labyrinthian in design. The tunnels themselves seemed to be alive, as they had pulsations of their own. While most explorers managed to make it out of the tunnels, not all of them did. There is one particular record of one of the explorers apparently being trapped by a group of tentacles. Here's what a nearby explorer witnessed. It was very strange. Everything was in the deepest stillness, until H accidentally stepped on one of those enormous cables that were all over the floor, and suddenly one of those cables or tentacles split, and from them more and more tentacles emerged that grabbed him in the blink of an eye. God, what they did to him. I'm not sure if I can describe it, but they used him like a container, like an additional layer of skin. Now his arms were more tentacles. As the teams would travel deeper into the tunnels, they were surprised to find structures that appeared to be man-made, sets of stairs and a large metal door. Behind the metal door, to the shock and horror of the exploration team, were dozens and dozens of eggs, similar to what was found in the tunnels explored by John Corelli. After taking samples, the exploration teams would leave the towers, mostly unharmed. On the same day, the towers would all subsequently disappear. They left behind large craters from where they were positioned. Large tentacles could be found in these craters. The surrounding buildings also suffered some structural damage from these tentacles. In Northampton County, Pennsylvania, a large tower sprouting tentacles can be seen. The crater this tower left behind, as well as the others, are soon filled over using cement, creating a hollow layer underneath for further research. Subsequent studies found that at least 21 towers appeared along the East Coast. Any evidence of the existence of the towers were confiscated by agents of the Interstellar Security Department at the Pentagon. According to research, the terrain of these craters shared a striking resemblance to past research of the Garden of Eden. The primary characteristic of these terrains is the extremely fertile ground, which constantly seemed to bore life. Tentacles that remained in the craters were later removed in order for the cities to restore the buildings that they lost as cause of the towers. The following footage you are about to see comes from a 2014 YouTube documentary by a Mexican conspiracy channel. The video covers strange sounds coming from the skies all over the world. Later in the documentary, we see the consequences for our use of the hololuminescence projector. The sounds coming from the sky emitted a frequency that caused the projector to collapse. This caused large cracks in the sky to form, leading people to question whether or not the Earth was covered by some sort of dome. This resulted in the Interstellar Security Department coming clean about the state of the moon. A satellite would later be sent up to take updated photos of the moon's current state. The following photographs were then divulged. Given these photos, it almost looks as if one of the Towers of Babel that once visited Earth had also made their presence known on the moon. Their ascension led to a large crater, which effectively caused the rift around the entire surface of the moon. All right, and that is where our story ends. I know, as usual with a lot of these things, it is a lot of information. And so, yeah, I'm just going to do my best to sort of break things down and make it a little bit more easy to understand, I guess. And I think the best way to do that is by starting with a timeline, because this story is reliant on dates. So in 1968, we are in the middle of the space race. It's the United States of America and it's the Soviet Union, and each of them are trying to race against one another to see who can conquer space travel first. And while Russia launches their first satellite, we have the first man on the moon. Now, upon arriving to the moon, American astronauts realize that something is wrong. There is a great rift or a crack forming in the moon, and it is very massive in size. And given time, people are going to look up into the sky and see that the moon is cracking, and it's going to cause mass panic. So, as a result of this, in 1990, the New Moon Project is started. And this involves building a large projector to basically cover up the fact that the moon is forming this large crack. From 1992 to 1993, we have a guy named John Corelli who is exploring tunnels under the remains of the biblical Tower of Babel. There, underneath, they find sort of this ceremonious tomb, and they find an egg that turns out to be extraterrestrial in nature. So, what do? Of course, they bring it back to their government facility and start studying it and seeing what's going on. And by 1994, that projector that we were talking about just now is finally finished. But the people behind it sort of screwed up, because as the fake moon is projected, it is very clear by looking in the skyline that the fake moon and the moon that you and I know are separate, very much so apart from one another. And so this miscalculation triggers what is known as the Great Reset. The reset basically involves projecting an entire new night sky. They don't have to worry about lining up the moon correctly. They can just pretty much cover up the entire sky and start from scratch. Now, jumping to 1996, we have satellite images of dark anomalies over the coast that begin to appear. The Corelli creature at this time also disappears from its holding cell at the, whatever this government facility is. And then from here, we have giant alien towers appearing across many American cities that eventually disappear and leave behind these super large craters in the earth. In 1998, a documentary that was never before seen eventually surfaces, I guess, and kind of suggests or proposes the theory that the Tower of Babel or Babylon was not what we thought it was in terms of a man-made stone structure attempting to reach the heavens, but it in fact was some sort of alien ship, basically. And this information is finally divulged to specific members of NASA and the Pentagon, not the American public yet. In 2014, strange sounds are heard around the world. These sounds eventually lead to the projector collapsing, and this basically looks like, if you look up in the sky, which has been covered up with this projector, there are now large cracks, and it's very evident that we are not living under, the true sky, but instead something, as people refer to as like a dome. And by 2019, the only information that we are given is that this projector is losing all of its effectiveness. Now, when it comes to interpreting and analyzing this series, I think it's difficult because I'm not exactly sure how to interpret the ending. The ending of the series shows the photos of the moon and the rift or large crack around it. But the crack to me looks to be started by some sort of crater similar to what we saw on Earth, in specifically the cities where the various towers had appeared. So assuming that this is correct and that the crater was left behind by a ship, my theory is that the tower on the moon was there for a long time, and it was dormant, almost like asleep. And when the moon was inevitably reached by American astronauts, it sort of woke it up, causing the ship to ascend or disappear, or however means of travel that these things travel by. And I think what it left behind was this sort of crater that led to the cracking of the moon. Now, where did the ship go from here exactly? I'm not sure. What I do know is that during this time, John Corelli also woke something up. His team had found this mysterious striped egg that evolved into a creature that, too, eventually physically disappeared from its cell. And when anything sort of extraterrestrial would reappear, it was on American soil in 1996. So I sort of have to wonder what was the purpose of the ships landing on American soil, not really interacting with the environment, no, beings descended into the cities. It was just they landed and explorers were allowed to go look underneath them in the tunnels and everything. So my theory, it might be kind of out there, but I believe that the purpose of the ships landing on American soil was like God once did in the Old Testament, to warn people, to warn us not to try and reach the heavens. Now, way back then in the Old Testament, obviously they didn't have planes or a means of seeing what was above them, and they actually saw, the heavens as being, in the clouds above them, whereas now we have the knowledge that if a heaven does exist, it's probably on some sort of different plane of existence, something that cannot be traveled to per se. And then, of course, I have to ask, well, what was God's purpose for knocking down the Tower of Babel? And this might be, again, as a Christian, I never view God's actions or rules as oh, well, don't do this, simply because I told you not to, or because I said so. I feel like there is true intention behind everything that he does. And I feel like in context of this story, perhaps that came in the form of, don't try to build this tower to reach the heavens or space, because obviously we know in the story it was a spaceship, but don't try and reach the heavens, because you will find things out there that are so beyond your comprehension and that could get you in a lot of trouble, and I don't want that for you. And that, of course, as we know in terms of the story, this story of Babylon is extraterrestrial life that is so far advanced that it could lead to our own demise. So that, my friends, are my thoughts and theories regarding the Babylon story by Anomaly. Like I said in the beginning of the video, if you want to support Babylon and check out some of their other stories, I'll leave a link in the description below. And as always, guys, thank you so much for taking the time to check out this video. And if you enjoy content like this, please make sure to subscribe to Something Sinister.